she walked in to buy a bottle of water. She left in handcuffs for wearing the wrong skin in the right uniform. What happened next shook an entire town and reignited a national conversation about honor, bias, and the power of standing tall. If this is your first time here, drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if stories like this matter to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. We bring powerful real-life stories every single day. Now, let's follow the story of Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks and the day she refused to kneel. The wind chime clinked softly as Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks pushed open the glass door of Clover Mart, a corner gas station on Red Oak Street in the small town of Langston, Georgia. Her Army Reserve uniform was crisp, sharply pressed, decorated with ribbons, nameplate gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights. The name Brooks shone on her chest, just above a tired but composed face. She had just finished a long day of drills at Fort Winfield. Just grabbing a bottle of water, she thought. 10 minutes to breathe before hitting the road home. She walked straight to the cooler, pulled out a cold bottle of spring water, and made her way to the counter. She could feel the eyes. People watching, maybe the uniform, maybe the fact that she was a black woman in a rank that this town likely hadn't seen often. "Hey there," the cashier said, forcing a smile as he rang up the drink. Alana nodded politely. "Long day. Cold water's all I need right now." She had just opened her wallet when the moment shattered. Sirens. 2 patrol cars screeched into the parking lot, red and blue lights spinning wildly, washing the windows in flashes of chaos. The entire store froze. A young girl dropped her bag of chips. A man scratching lottery tickets stepped aside in alarm. The cashier ducked behind the counter. Alana stood still, bottle in hand, eyes shifting toward the entrance. 2 white officers burst in, tense like pulled wires. One was tall, gaunt-jawed Officer Darren Keene. The other, stocky and red-faced, Officer Roy Delgado. No questions, no greetings, no pause. Everybody out. Hands where I can see 'em. Keene's voice roared as his hand gripped the butt of his holstered gun. The room went ice cold. People scattered. Only Alana remained where she stood, shocked, brows furrowing. Her hands lifted calmly, instinctively. "What's going on here?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Keene marched straight toward her, eyes locked like a judge with a sentence already written. "You're suspected of impersonating a service member." Alana blinked. "Excuse me? I'm an actual soldier." She didn't finish. Delgado stepped forward, twisted her arm behind her back, and the cold click of handcuffs cut through the room like a final verdict. The water bottle fell, rolled across the tile floor. "You're making a serious mistake," Alana said, breath tightening but still controlled. "Yeah." Keene smirked. "They all say that." And then they dragged her out of the store, past the confused, uneasy stares of people who couldn't yet tell if they'd just witnessed the arrest of a criminal or the humiliation of a hero. The sidewalk burned, so hot it felt like it pierced right to the fabric of her combat pants. Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks was forced to her knees, hands locked tightly behind her back, while Officers Keene and Delgado stood over her, as if they'd just subdued a threat to national security. She didn't fight. She didn't scream. But that didn't mean it didn't hurt. Not the body. The kind of pain that crushes you between honor and prejudice, right on the soil you swore to defend. "I've served this country for 11 years, Alana said, her breath steady. "You didn't ask my name. You didn't ask for my military ID. You didn't check a thing." "Why?" Keene raised a brow, his hand still resting on the Glock at his hip, like it might leap into action on its own. "I don't need a name to know when someone's playing soldier." Delgado chuckled. "Gotta admit, it looks good. Real good. But fakes online these days? Spot on. Medals, ribbons, full gear. It's all out there." "I didn't buy these," Alana said quietly, but her voice hit like a stone. "I earned them. I bled for them. And no one gets to call them fake. Just because my skin doesn't match your poster." Across the street, a delivery truck slowed. A woman raised her phone and began to record. The crowd began to form. Quiet, hesitant, questioning. A black woman in uniform, handcuffed on a public sidewalk. with no clear charge, no announcement, no justification. From inside Clover Mart, a young store clerk, maybe 20, stepped out, tablet still in hand, her eyes locked on Alana, still kneeling. The wind tugged gently at the service ribbon on Alana's chest, as if refusing to stay silent. "She just paid," the clerk stammered. "She didn't do anything. She just bought water." Keen waved her off. "Not your business. Go back inside, unless you want problems too." Delgado scanned the crowd, noticing phones recording. A flicker of unease crossed his face. "Maybe we should call to confirm." "No," Keen snapped. "She's acting. Probably live streaming this on purpose. Trying to blow it up. I'm not getting played." Alana lifted her head, eyes turned toward the gray sky above. "You don't need a gun to kill someone like me," she said hoarsely. "All it takes is suspicion. All it takes is bias. All it takes is 3 minutes of silence. And you can kill a lifetime of service." And the worst part was, she knew she was right. Still kneeling on the concrete, her left knee going numb under Langston's fading evening sun, Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks held her posture, head high, eyes unflinching. She didn't beg. She didn't whimper. She was waiting for the right moment, and it came. When a white man stepped out of a stopped SUV at the red light, holding up his phone. "I'm recording," he said loudly, "and I see no resistance here. I see a woman in uniform, forced to her knees in public. How exactly do you plan to explain this?" Officer Roy Delgado began to sweat, but Darren Keene stood firm, his posture still cocky, his hand tightening subtly around his belt. "I'd like to make a phone call," Alana said, her voice steady trained, the kind used to giving tactical orders under pressure. Keene glanced at Delgado, shrugged. "Fine, just don't call the press." "I don't need the press," Alana replied, lips curling slightly. "I'm calling my direct commander, Colonel Marissa Grant." The air around them shifted. Delgado froze. "Wait, the person you're calling is a real colonel." "Where's the phone?" Alana tilted her head. "Left side cargo pocket. Passcode 1105. That's when a voice spoke from behind. "I can help her." Everyone turned. It was Maya, the clerk from Clover Mart, holding the phone she'd picked up after it fell during the arrest. "I saw it drop. The screen didn't lock. I didn't touch anything, but if she allows..." Alana nodded. "Call the contact labeled Colonel M. Grant. It'll have a star next to it." Maya followed the instructions. The phone rang once, twice, and the street went completely silent. Then a voice crackled through the speaker. "This is Colonel Marissa Grant." Maya looked to Alana. She nodded. "Ma'am, this is Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks. I'm being detained at a gas station in Langston. They're accusing me of impersonating military personnel." A long pause followed, but anyone with military experience recognized it for what it was. Not hesitation, but a tactical pause. "Your location?" "Clover Mart, corner of Red Oak and 5th. Do not move. I'm en route." The call ended. Alana turned to the officers. "Help is on the way." Delgado scoffed. "You serious? A colonel's not rolling up in an SUV to rescue a sergeant in the middle of town. This isn't Hollywood." Alana locked eyes with him. "To me, this isn't a movie. This is real, and the truth is on its way." 7 minutes later, the sun still shone, but the air at the corner of Red Oak and 5th felt compressed, as if the small town of Langston, Georgia, was holding its breath, waiting for something to erupt. Then 3 black SUVs glided into the parking lot of Clover Mart. No sirens, no shouting, but everyone felt it. This presence wasn't police, fire, or civilian. It was order, silent authority. All doors open at once. 6 individuals in crisp navy blue military uniforms stepped out, each bearing regulation insignia and ID badges across their chests. Their boots struck the pavement in perfect rhythm, measured, deliberate. People on the sidewalk instinctively backed away. No one said a word. They didn't have to. Everyone understood. Something serious was about to happen. Then, the lead SUV's door swung open. Colonel Marissa, Grant stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver hair cropped close like a blade freshly honed. Her uniform razor-sharp, a long sash of commendations stretching from her left collar down to her hip. Every step she took landed like a drumbeat on the nerves of the two officers standing over Alana. Officer Darren Keene adjusted his belt instinctively. Delgado swallowed hard. At least 3 phones from different corners were still filming, capturing every second. Grant didn't acknowledge the crowd. She looked at only 2 people, the 2 who would turn a staff sergeant into a kneeling symbol on the street. Which of you is Darren Keene? Her voice clanged like steel meeting stone. Keene stepped forward. I'm the officer who made the arrest. Grant cut him off cold. No one arrests a service member in full regulation uniform, with legal insignia, without verifying ID or chain of command. She turned to Delgado. Did you check her military ID? Delgado murmured. No, ma'am. Did you ask her to present ID, badge, or contact a superior officer? No, we assumed because the uniform looked too authentic. Grant's eyes narrowed. That was your reason? Because the uniform looked too correct. You assumed she was a fraud. The Clover Mart parking lot had become an open-air courtroom. No judge, no jury, just a colonel with eyes sharp as bayonets, and a staff sergeant with fresh marks on her wrists where the cuffs had been. Colonel Marissa Grant turned to the military investigator standing just behind her and gave a single nod. He stepped forward, opened a leather case, and pulled out 2 crisp, official documents stamped with a bold red seal. Suspension orders, immediate equipment, and firearm surrender required on site. Grant didn't raise her voice, but her words sliced through the air like a blade. Officer Darren Keene, Officer Roy Delgado, you conducted yourselves without due process, failed to verify identity, and exhibited clear signs of racial bias in your treatment of a lawful U.S. Army Reserve service member in full regulation uniform. Per directive from the Office of the Department of Defense Inspector General, you are hereby suspended from duty effective immediately, pending investigation into abuse of authority and civil rights violations under racially motivated conduct. Keene's jaw dropped. You don't have jurisdiction over us. We serve the city. Grant took a step forward, every word driving into the pavement like a gavel. You laid hands on a uniformed soldier on duty and treated her like a criminal in broad daylight. My jurisdiction does not come from the city of Langston. It comes from Washington, D.C., the place I report directly to. Delgado began removing his radio from his shoulder, his hands visibly trembling. Keene tried to stay firm. I was following my instincts. Instinct does not override the law. Grant cut in coldly. And instincts rooted in racial bias are not a tool of justice. They're a liability. The investigator extended his hand. Weapons, badges, and access credentials. Now! Keene hesitated. One breath, thick with pride, fear, and finality. Then he unclipped his sidearm, handing it over like surrendering a limb. Delgado followed, silent, pale. Both men were escorted from the scene, not in handcuffs, but heads down, and stripped of the uniforms that once shielded them. For now, they were no longer officers, and with every step they took away, honor returned, inch by inch, to Alana. The world seemed to go quiet. Colonel Grant stepped forward, knelt slightly, and removed the cuffs from Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks herself. Each metallic click felt like an old system cracking. Get up, Sergeant, she said, not loudly, but loud enough to stop the air itself. You never deserved to kneel here. Alana lifted her chin, eyes shimmering, not from weakness, but because the truth had finally stepped into the light, alongside a commander who chose to stand in front, not behind. She pressed a knee to the ground, steadied herself, and rose. No one offered a hand. No one needed to. That was the weight and the power of this moment. The crowd behind her, as if by silent consensus, lowered their phones, not because they were told, but because they knew this moment didn't need a lens. This moment belonged to Alana. not as a victim, but as a soldier restored to honor. In the full light of day and collective conscience, Colonel Grant stood beside her, silent for a beat, then dipped her head slightly, not as a command, but as acknowledgement. "We don't stand because they allowed Alana," she said quietly, a voice for only two to hear. "We stand because we have a right to." And today, you reminded them of that. Alana stood tall. Dust clung to her knees, but her spine remained unbroken. The evening sun cast its last golden rays over her shoulder, catching the ribbons and medals on her chest, emblems of 11 years in uniform, 3 overseas deployments, and more unnamed hours of duty than most would ever count. A soldier who did not bow, a human being not defined by another's stare, a symbol risen by her own strength. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her silence now was louder than any protest. Outside, an elderly woman from a cafe across the street shouted. Should have been like this from the start. Then applause, not the kind fueled by rage, but by relief. Relief that justice had finally shown up in olive green, with ribbons glinting, and a gaze that refused to bend. The clapping swelled, joined by voices calling out, "Brooks! Thank you, Sergeant. That's who we should salute." From the crowd, a boy no older than 10, baseball jersey stained with mud, pushed forward and stared up at Alana with wide, bright eyes. "Are you really a soldier?" he asked. Alana knelt slightly, smiling gently, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I am," she said, "and if you want, one day you could be one too. But you have to know something. Being a soldier isn't just about wearing a uniform. It's about how you stand, when no one else is standing with you." The boy's mother broke into quiet tears, nodding her thanks as her voice caught in her throat. Maya, the young clerk from Clover Mart, emerged from inside, still in her apron, hands trembling, as she carried the cold bottle of water. Alana had dropped when she was arrested. She stepped forward and held it out. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Awe, gratitude, something close to reverence. Alana accepted it, nodding softly. "Thank you for not looking away." Colonel Grant turned to leave, but just before stepping into her vehicle, she paused and addressed the officer, leading her escort detail. "Take down the names of every witness. Secure footage from every camera on and around this gas station. I'll submit the file personally to the Department of Defense." The air on Red Oak Street had changed. No longer the place where a black woman was forced to her knees for wearing her uniform. It was now the place where she was lifted into light, into truth, into history. Less than 24 hours later, the video of Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks kneeling in cuffs, and then being unshackled by Colonel Marissa Grant, spread like wildfire across the internet. On TikTok, the hashtag Salute Sergeant Alana hit 2.3 million views by midday. On X, formerly Twitter, veterans, artists, and senators alike spoke up. Everyone had something to say, but nearly all shared one common sentiment. She deserves a salute, not shackles. The next afternoon, on a live broadcast of American Conscience, a widely watched political talk show, a special guest took the stage. Major General Rhett Marcus Ellison, one of Georgia's first black generals, a decorated veteran of U.S. Special Forces. The host leaned forward, asking, "General Ellison, do you have anything you'd like to say to Sergeant Alana Brooks?" He looked directly into the camera, and when he spoke, his words landed like a national oath. Alana Brooks is not just a staff sergeant. She is the embodiment of resolve, honor, and discipline in a world that often forgets those who serve it in silence. She was not brought to her knees. She chose to rise in the way this country needed to be reminded that skin color does not define allegiance. The studio audience rose to their feet. Applause echoed across the set, and the clip of his words soon became the soundtrack to thousands of tribute videos for Alana online. Back in Langston, Clover Mart once just another sleepy gas station, was now crowded with reporters, news vans, and locals lining up to take photos at the place where history stood tall. A street artist painted a mural on the red brick wall behind the station. Alana in full uniform, an American flag in her hand, head held high, eyes locked forward, and beneath it, a single caption, "Not in chains, in command." Under mounting media pressure, Mayor Evelyn Cole knew silence was no longer an option. On Monday morning, sunlight poured down the steps of Langston City Hall, where a forest of microphones pointed at her from nearly every national news outlet. Mayor Cole stepped onto the podium, her face set like carved stone. For the first time in her term, she realized the eyes before her weren't just waiting for answers. They were delivering judgment. Below the steps, a crowd had gathered, lining the temporary red carpet. Signs swayed in the breeze. Justice for Alana. This uniform deserves respect, not suspicion. Langston, do better. Mayor Cole cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping across cameras streaming live across Georgia. First, let me say something that should have been said much sooner. On behalf of the city of Langston, I offer a public and heartfelt apology to Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks. She should never have been treated like a suspect, simply for wearing the uniform of our armed forces, and for having darker skin while doing so. We are conducting a full review of our police force, and I give you my word, this will not be swept under the rug. Applause rippled through the crowd, not thunderous, but clear. The actions of Officers Darren Keene and Roy Delgado were unacceptable. They failed to follow even basic identification protocols. They ignored what was plainly in front of them, and above all, they allowed bias to lead where law should have. A reporter raised a hand. "Mayor Cole, have they been suspended, or?" She cut in for the first time, without evasion. "No, they are not suspended. They are terminated, effective immediately." The words landed like a dropped gavel. Cameras flashed in rapid succession. News outlets blasted headlines in real time. In the crowd, a group of ROTC students erupted in applause, rising to their feet as they chanted, "We are Alana." Meanwhile, on the other side of Langston, Darren Keene slowly opened the door to his usual coffee shop. But instead of familiar nods and greetings, all he got were eyes that turned away. Myrna, the cafe owner, once a vocal supporter during his fundraising drives, simply said, "I serve coffee, not complicit silence." Across town, in a modest apartment near the city's southern edge, Alana Brooks sat by the window, her phone streaming the press conference. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. But when the line came, "She deserves a salute, not suspicion," she smiled, just a small smile. But it was the smile of someone who didn't win by yelling, but by standing tall. She placed her hand gently over the insignia pinned to her uniform, not as a show of rank, but as a quiet reminder to herself. Honor isn't granted. It's not gifted. It's simply something no one has a right to take away. And in the final seconds of the press conference, Mayor Cole looked directly into the lens of the live broadcast. "We will reform the Langston Police Department from the ground up, and we will invite Staff Sergeant Brooks to speak at the next police academy graduation. Because if we want officers who understand how to protect dignity, then we must start by listening to someone who once had it stripped away." 3 weeks later, inside the main auditorium of the Langston Police Academy, every seat was filled. Young faces, white, black, Latino, Asian, sat upright in their training uniforms. Their chests were still bare of badges, but their eyes gleamed with the weight of what they were about to carry. A woman stepped onto the stage, Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks. She wore her dress olive uniform, and though no introduction was given, none was needed. The world already knew who she was. Social media, national headlines. But today, she wasn't here to retell what happened. She came to plant something new. She held no paper, no mic clipped to her collar, just her voice and the gravity of lived experience. "I'm not here to say you're wrong. I'm here to ask, can you be better? A few recruits blinked. The silence was sharper than any siren. I didn't kneel because I was weak. I kneeled because I was forced to. But I stood up because I knew I had the right to stand. And you, every day you wear this uniform, you will be given power. But remember this. She paused. Her eyes swept the room like a spotlight with no beam. Power doesn't make you right. Listening does. In the front row, a young female cadet nodded softly, fingers tightening around her pen, as if holding on to something precious. You will see a person. Maybe they look like me. Maybe they wear a uniform. Maybe they don't. But remember, the person in front of you is a human being, not a judgment. Applause began at the back. It spread like a breeze. Not loud, not thunderous, but it meant the words had landed, exactly where they were meant to. Alana gave a slight nod, then stepped down from the podium. No waves, no lingering smiles. She didn't need to say more. She only needed them to remember. And as she neared the exit, a new officer whispered under his breath, "One day, I want to handle things like she did, not with a gun, but with resolve." That late afternoon, Staff Sergeant Alana Brooks sat on the creaky wooden chair on the front porch of her small home in South Langston. The wind drifted through the old oak trees, rustling like it was retelling a story of resolve, of honor, and of faith that refused to be broken. In her hand, a glass of sweet tea, not a military-issued thermos, not a mug stamped with the base insignia, just a plain glass, chipped at one corner, imperfect, but still capable of holding sweetness. For those who know how to savor it, on the table beside her, her phone lay face down. Social media was on fire. The hashtag Salute Sergeant Alana was still trending. Messages, calls, interview requests poured in from everywhere. But she wasn't looking. She didn't need to. I didn't tell this story to be famous. She murmured, as if speaking to the breeze. I told it so the ones who come after me will know they don't walk alone. A sparrow landed softly on the windowsill. She smiled, inhaled slowly. The smell of damp wood and the hum of late summer cicadas braided together into a kind of silence she had fought to reclaim. She didn't ask for revenge. She didn't want anyone to kneel the way she had been forced to. She only wanted justice to have a voice and truth to have ground to stand on. From inside the house, her mother, Camille, called out, "You want more ice, baby? Tea's getting weak out here." Alana answered with a short laugh, quiet but deep enough to soften every bruise she had ever carried. She didn't respond directly. Instead, she turned her gaze to the front yard, eyes fixed on a horizon only she could see, as if speaking to a generation not yet born. Walk, like the ground belongs to you, not because you took it, but because you have every right to stand on it, just like anyone else. The story ends here, but the sound of Alana's footsteps, and of all those ever doubted, for daring to be different, will echo for generations.